What's going on, everybody? This is Jake Zimmers for the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown. I am sitting down here with Pennsylvania governor candidate Ken Krawchuk. Thank you for coming in today.
A pleasure to be here, Jake. I'm glad you invited me.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure. Tell us a little bit about your background in politics.
Well, Jake, I've been a registered Libertarian since 1993. I used to be a Democrat, spent 20 years as a Democrat thinking I could use your means for my ends. Until I found out about the Libertarian Party and its message. The central message is different from the two other parties because we Libertarians are the party of principle. Every law we support or oppose can be traced back to one idea. The idea that your life is yours, that your property is yours, that you have the inalienable right to live your life your way without interference, provided only that you respect the rights and property of others. It's the golden rule on a political level. And it wasn't so much that I converted to becoming a libertarian. I was always a libertarian. I just never realized it. So that's my political background. I'm also an information technology guy.
Wow.
I hold 3 United States patents related to database theory.
Wow.
So I get along pretty cool with the geeks.
Yeah.
I'm also an author. My first book just came out last year, Atlas Snubbed. It's a parody sequel to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
I'm also married. My wife and I have been married now about 37 years. We haven't gotten tired of each other yet. We have 3 kids, 2 grandkids, 1 on the way.
Wow.
I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I live just outside of Philly now. So I guess there in a nutshell, it describes me and my party.
All right. What makes you qualified to be the governor of the state?
Well, there are several things that makes me qualified. Probably the most important one is that I have read and studied the Pennsylvania Constitution. And based upon the actions of virtually all Democrats and Republicans, I would challenge them that they probably have never even looked at it, let alone read it. For example, Article 1, Section 21 says, "The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned." Now, I'm wondering why so many politicians question our right to bear arms. Obviously, when they swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, either they didn't mean it or they hadn't read it. And I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they haven't read it. So that's one of my qualifications. The other one is that I've run my own information technology consulting firm for the last 26 years. So I know what it is to manage a large budget, to manage people, and to succeed. So I've been in the public sector. I've also done a lot of other public sector things. For example, I'm a graduate of the Abington Citizens Police Academy, so I'm familiar with police procedures and things along those lines. Plus, also, I'm a family man, and I think that, more than anything, qualifies me for being governor of Pennsylvania because I know what it takes to raise a family in these tough times. That's a good question. Nobody's asked me that yet this year.
All right. Something I was actually curious about was, when the majority of people look at, certain political races today, they only see the 2 main parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, and they always hear about parties such as the Libertarian Party, also the Green Party, for example, and they're kind of, given a pat on the back, thanks for participating, but you're not gonna go anywhere, so to speak. Like that's that could be what, in your opinion, separates your party from every other major political party?
Well, I already mentioned to you that we are different because we are the party of principle.
Right.
We believe in your life, your way. So I think right there that differentiates us from every political party on the planet. If you go to a Democrat, asks what he stands for, you read his platform, 6 months later you better read it again because it likely is going to change. Democrats used to be for high taxation, then it was low taxation. Then they were for the war on drugs, now they're for the decriminalization of marijuana. Well, we libertarians, we've always been for low taxation. We've always been for decriminalization of marijuana. We've always been for permitting gay marriage. So that's probably one of the biggest differences. But one of the reasons why you haven't seen more of the libertarians on the political scene is because the 2 old parties have rigged the game to keep us down. For example, for Mr. Corbett, whoever the Democrat is, for them to get on the ballot, they need 2,000 signatures from Pennsylvania voters. I need 16,639. Even though the Constitution, Article 1, Section 5, says that all elections shall be equal. It's a crime. It's a crime against Pennsylvania. It's a crime against third parties. They're just trying to keep the competition down. And in the last statewide election, when they were looking for state rep candidates, 38% of the seats had no challenger. There was just either a Democrat or a Republican and nobody else, because they're doing their best to keep us out of the game. And it's actually gotten worse than that, because I ran last in 2002. I ran against Ed Rendell for governor. In 2004, the Republicans and Democrats started challenging all the candidates in court. So in 2004, they threw Ralph Nader off the ballot and fined him $80,000 for trying to get on the ballot. In 2006, they threw the Green candidate, Carl Romanelli, off the ballot and fined him $80,000. It's a nightmare. I'm currently involved in 2 court cases to try and have those nasty fines and this unfair ballot access laws overturned. And just one final note about that. We have a bill in the Senate right now, Senate Bill 195, called the Voters' Choice Act, which will level the playing field. So if anybody's as outraged as I am about these ridiculous ballot access requirements, call their state senator, state representative, and ask them to support Senate Bill 195, the Voters' Choice Act.
What would you say are your main positions and platforms on certain issues?
I have several of them, but the top 3 that I always start off with, number 1 is taxes. Taxes are just too high. In fact, taxes, the cost of government in Pennsylvania has been rising at more than 3 times the rate of inflation for over 50 years. Back in 1964, 50 years ago, the average citizen paid $100 in Pennsylvania tax. Today, that number is over $2,300. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat in office or a Republican. It doesn't matter if it's the high inflation era, the Carter years, or low inflation. The direction of government is always 3 times the rate of inflation. And I have to say that Governor Corbett's new budget, it's not 3 times the rate of inflation. It's 4 times the rate of inflation. Now, when I'm governor, that trend will end. The Pennsylvania Constitution gives governor the power of the veto. So I'm promising I will veto every single tax increase that crosses my desk. Pennsylvania's government will stop growing when I'm governor, and I need no one's permission to do this. I'm also going to use the line item veto to get rid of pork barrel projects, to get rid of unconstitutional spending, self-serving political spending, and that way I'll be able to reduce the size of government and cut taxes. And it is my goal to eliminate the personal income tax over the course of my term. So that's my big issue, is taxes. Number 2 is crime. Right now, of course, crime is out of control. It's always out of control. A study done by the Commonwealth Foundation in Harrisburg found that 95% of all crimes are committed by only 5% of the criminals. So again, using the power granted to the governor by the Constitution, I'll be able to cut crime for a guaranteed cut in crime. I'm going to eliminate parole for violent criminals. I think it's insane to let these guys out of jail, especially after we've gotten them through our convoluted criminal justice system. Since 95% of all crimes are committed by these 5% of the bad guys, we are guaranteed to reduce crime. That'd be cool. It'd be safer walking the streets at night. You got an extra $1,600 in your pocket from my tax cuts. I mean, that'd be a good night. So they're my top 2 issues. I got my top 3. I always talk about education. Some people say I should talk about education first, because definitely it's important. But right now, Pennsylvania education, it could be improved. The reason why it's not as good as it could be is because 95% of all of our kids go to the same school system, the government school system. It's a virtual monopoly. So costs are high, like any monopoly, choice is low, and quality, it's not always the best. What I would like to do is end that monopoly. And the way to do it is to bring in somebody who has been ignored in the debate so far, the parents. Specifically, what I would like to see is that a parent can choose any government school for their child, and the funding which would have gone to their neighborhood school will follow the child to the school of the parent's choice. That way, good schools will get more funding and grow, and bad schools will get less funding and be shut down. And it's not good or bad, in my opinion, or in opinion of the Board of Education in Harrisburg or some out-of-state Common Core standards. It's good or bad in the opinion of the people who matter most, the parents.
All right. We're sitting here with Pennsylvania governor candidate Ken Krawchuk. And something I failed to touch on previously, being a member of the Libertarian Party, and again being a part of the party that is constantly overlooked, does being in that situation affect your approach, the way that you maybe present issues, or the way you handle your how you would attack those issues?
Well, let me question your question for a minute there. When I first got involved with the Libertarian Party back in the early 90s, your statement would have been a true one. We were overlooked. I would go up to somebody and say, "Oh, I'm a Libertarian." And they'd say, "Oh, really? I'm Presbyterian." But that doesn't happen anymore, mainly because of people like Ron Paul, Rand Paul, and others. People know who we are. Now, I mentioned I ran in 2002 for governor against Ed Rendell. That was an uphill battle all the way up until I got into the first televised debate in September, a couple months before the election. And then it was like the floodgates opened. Everybody suddenly knew about the Libertarian Party. This year, it's much different, much, much different. I've already been invited to debates. I've already been invited to radio programs like yours. I'm getting questionnaires in the mail. My schedule is already as packed now as it was then in September. So people definitely know the libertarian message is out there. And another reason why we're not being overlooked is because a lot of the things that I talked about in 2002 were cutting edge then. Today they're mainstream, like ending this insane war on drugs, like decriminalizing marijuana, allowing for gay marriage, so many different things. Now these things are all cutting edge. They're all mainstream, where before they were cutting edge. So people are waking up to the libertarian message of peace, of prosperity, of your life, your way, as long as you don't harm other people.
How would you describe how your campaign has been going so far?
Well, I think I just gave you a good idea right there. Things are going through the roof. I'm just getting invited to all over the place. And there's probably the biggest thing is that there's a tide change in America and also here in Pennsylvania, more and more toward the libertarian side, especially among the younger people. The average age of the Libertarian Party, I just noted, has plummeted from the low 40s to the low 30s over the last 10 years. Wow. And again, I credit a lot of that to libertarians like Ron Paul and Rand Paul, because they're bringing to the awareness of younger people a lot of things that I never thought about when I was in school. Like, for example, the Federal Reserve Bank. They just print money up whenever they want it. So they're causing inflation. They're the direct cause of inflation in America. The young people look at these wars overseas and how they're draining all the money from all the coffers around here. They also look at Social Security. Jake, do you think you're ever going to be able to collect Social Security? Nobody does. I mean, maybe I'm fortunate because I just turned 61, so maybe I'll be able to collect it. But after that, no, it's just not a good deal. So the young people know this. You can't fool a younger person. They can spot a phony from miles away. And I remember when I was younger, it was the same thing when I looked at a politician. They all seemed phony to me back then because there was no Libertarian Party. But now we've actually got somebody who's going to be a friend of the taxpayer, who's going to lower taxes, going to reduce crime, going to end this insane war on drugs, who's going to let you live your life your way as long as you let others do the same.
All right. How can people get more info about yourself?
Well, obviously, in this era of the World Wide Web, I'm out there. My website is kenk.org, kenk.org, and Twitter and Facebook, kenk2014, kenk2014. That's probably the two best ways. And you can find a lot of my stands out there on the web, not only about education and the drug war, but also things like abortion and fracking, pollution, things along those lines. So it's at kenk.org, and I would suggest people do it. And if they want to get in touch with me, or better yet, if they want to invite me to their own local school or one of their own events, I'm traveling the state. And Jake, just like I was able to get you into my schedule pretty easy and stop in here, I could do that with other people too. So if people want to drop me a line, my email is kenk@kenk.org, or they can go to the website kenk.org and reach me that way.
Do you have any upcoming events coming up, like debates and what have you?
They're all over the place. I'm a member of Toastmasters International. And Toastmasters, I don't know if you're aware of it, they're an organization whose mission is to provide a supportive environment to learn public speaking and leadership skills. I've been a Toastmaster about 16 years. That's where I learned how to speak in public. This is why I'm not shaking in my boots talking to you. Most people are scared to death to do what you and I do. But what they'll be doing is giving me an evaluation of my stump speech, where I talk about taxes and education and things like that, and point out those areas that are working well and those areas where I could improve. And it's all done in a positive manner. They're not going to say, Ken, that speech sucked. They'll say, Ken, that was a good speech, but it would have been more effective had you held up your Constitution when you were talking about it. But anyway, there are so many things. I keep my schedule up to date. It's out on my website, kenk.org/schedule, and it goes right on out for the next several months. And one thing that's on there, I'll be up Knoebels the last weekend of this month for opening weekend. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Flying Turns roller coaster is finally open. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Ken Krawchuk, Libertarian governor candidate for the state of Pennsylvania. Ken, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Jake, great to be here, man. Thanks a lot.